Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. I'm BaddestFish80 and today we've got a lot of information to go through. We've got the new patch for Minion Masters. This is going to be 1.37. It's a brand new expansion. There's a bunch of stuff to cover. We're going to dive right in and get involved. Okay, so this brand new expansion is going to be called Kaboom Kingdom. Now remember, the way the expansions work for Minion Masters is it will be a 3-month expansion. Each of those months will be a new season with new cards and all that kind of good stuff. So this is a brand new season. What is the new season? What is the new expansion going to bring to us? Well, let's find out. Okay, so as mentioned, version 1.37. This is dropping Thursday, the 7th of July. As always, there's going to be a free DLC that's normally over the weekend, available on Steam and on Xbox. Now we're going to have, as always again, some new cards. Now this time we're going to have a new arena and some updated arenas. That's exciting. We'll look through those briefly in a moment. Now we're going to have a brand new adventure and some news regarding the current existing adventures, balance changes, as always, and of course, some bug fixes. Okay, so without any further ado, let's dive in and start exploring the new stuff. Okay, so we got the new cards first of all. The first new card is Zip's Zappinator. Now, as you would probably have guessed by the Kaboom Kingdom logo, this is going to be a scrap-based expansion. And the first card is, of course, scrap-based. Now, Zip's Zappinator. What do we have? Well, this is a 5 mana ranged scrap minion. It's got 350 health. It does 80 damage every 5 seconds. It can hit ground and air with a range of 10, speed of 4, and you can wildcard it to your heart's delight in duos. Now, let's find out a little bit more about it. There's a new keyword here, piloted. We'll find out about that in a little bit. Its attacks inflict stun, so it will stun for 2 seconds. And it has an ability. So what do we have here? Piloted, and this is something we'll see when we look at the balance changes. A number of cards are going to be becoming piloted. So what happens is when the unit dies, it summons a scrat. So this is going to be similar, I believe, to how the Razor Squadron works. And remember, the Razor Squadron, when those units die, they drop a Marine. This is going to be similar, but it's going to be a scrat. Now, the ability More Zap. So what this does is it resets the attack. So instead of having to wait the 5 seconds for the next attack, it resets the attack so you can attack again much more quickly. And it additionally adds an extra bolt of lightning. This is a permanent extra bolt of lightning. So if you use it once, then it's going to have an extra bolt each time you use it. Now, this is unlike some of the other ability cards where you can continue using them as you wish. This will, as always, get more expensive each time you play it. I think it starts at 1 mana. And it will become something that can be played 3 times, and then once it's played 3 times it disappears. That's the maximum it can do. Now, the way that Zip's attack works is it has a kind of frontal cone attack, so it will attack targets within that. And I believe the way it works is when you've upgraded his attack with more zap to get more zaps, he will attack as many different targets as he can. And if there are more zaps than targets, then they will then go to his main target and then spread out from there. Okay, so that's Zip's Zappinator. This is what Zip is going to look like in the game. So, familiar scrat aesthetic. So Zip is the first new card. The second new card is the Rocket Scrat. Now, the Rocket Scrat, as we'll find out here, this is a 2 mana minion. It has a barrel shield. So it's got a barrel shield. Under that shield it has 15 HP. So what does it do? Well, it launches itself at nearby enemies, damaging both enemies and itself. So it does 100 damage, and it is a small AoE, area of effect damage. Now, because it damages itself, its first attack will take the shield off, then its second attack will destroy it. Of course, if you have extra shields or anything like that, you can get some more attacks out of it. So this is kind of a tricky little guy. We've got the barrel shield there. That's something that we're pretty familiar with previous Scrat cards. They have the barrel shield, which gives them some extra tankiness but does slow them down, and then when the shield has been destroyed, then the Scrat itself underneath comes out. So little rocket Scrat, gonna throw itself at enemies and do some AoE. Be interesting to see how these are. Now, when we tested these cards in the test realm, the PTR, Zip was very strong. I know he has been nerfed from how he was previously. He has a lot less health now, so it'll be interesting to see balance-wise how that pans out when we get to see him in the hands of players out in the wild. Okay, so those are the cards. Now, as mentioned, we're going to have some arena updates. So what is going to happen is a lot, not all, but almost all, I think, of the old arenas are going to be remade with a new, fancier, better looking, more in-world arena. And what I mean by that is a lot of the previous arenas were kind of floating platforms. The new ones you'll see are more within an environment. So here we have the old starting arena, where on the left it's the previous and on the right it's the new one. Now, one thing to note here is that unlike previously where you could have a different arena for one team and a different for the other, with the new arena facility it's going to be one arena for everyone, and the arena that gets picked is going to be somewhat random between the players, but the arenas with the higher rarity will have a better chance of being picked. So if we just go through and have a look at the different arenas here, we've got this one is the Tranquil Estate. Now we've got Scrat World. We've got Magma Court. Now we've got Dwarf World and the Abandoned Scrat World. So it'd be fun to see these in the game. Basically, they just look a lot more detailed, a lot more image fidelity, and far more anchored within an environment. Now, with this Battle Pass, instead of a new skin, there's going to be a new arena that is going to be obtainable. Now, if you're familiar with the history of Beta Dwarf, one of their previous games was called Forced Showdown, kind of a roguelike game. And this arena is going to be based on the design from that. So that's a nice little callback to their previous game. So this is going to be an arena that's going to be unlockable via the Battle Pass. Okay, so new arenas, but don't worry, there's still more to come. As mentioned previously, we're going to have a brand new adventure. So the new adventure is going to be called Kaboom Kingdom, of course, to go along with this expansion. As with the previous Frost Dragon's Lair, this is going to be a solo and co-op adventure. That means you can play it on your own or with a friend or guildmate. Now, along with this adventure, there's going to be a new playable master within the adventure. So Siege Imperator Ruby with some Ruby-esque, Outlander-esque mechanic perks there. We've got the cannon, get a plasma blast in your deck. Minions get spawned with gnats and fire a plasma blast at every enemy minion. So those are the perks. And as well as a new master, we're going to have some new relics. Now, if you're not familiar with the adventures are the PvE, player versus environment part of the game. And as you go through it, you build your deck from choices offered to you, both in terms of cards and in terms of relics. Relics are things that empower your cards and deck in certain ways. So here's an example of some of the relics that are available. Big and small. It's to do with if you play a 6 mana card, you get a random 1 or 2 mana minion from your deck. Rage becomes Berserker Rage, and if you cast a spell, it gets recast after 20 seconds. So if you've played the adventures, you'll be familiar with the fact there's a lot of craziness that goes on. So the new master and the new relics will hopefully add to the craziness. Now, one thing to add is all of the current adventures are going to be updated so that you can play them co-op. So previously they were only solo, apart from the last adventure, but they're all going to be updated so you can play them solo and co-op. The only caveat of that is the 2 older adventures, which are the Quest for Mountain Shaper and Saving Jade Spark Jungle, are going to be removed from purchase. I don't think they're going to be playable by co-op, but check it and find out. If you've already purchased them, then you will retain them and you can still play them. It's just not something that could be purchased by any newer players. Okay, so there we have the new adventure, but we still have more. As always, we're going to have a raft of balance changes. Now, we'll go through the balance changes as normal, where we'll have the buffs, the rebalances, and the nerfs. The rebalances are where things are changed in quite a dramatic way, or receive multiple changes that it's not specifically obvious if it's a buff or a nerf. So, let's find out. So the first thing we have is a change primarily to Volko. So Volko's perk 3, Berserker Rage. Remember, at perk 3, when you pick up the Ember of Flame, you will get Berserker Rage on your melee minions. Berserker Rage used to do self-damage, but it will no longer do self-damage. That means that whilst your units will still become very, very powerful at perk 3, they will not receive that self-damage. So that's a buff primarily to Volko, but anything else in the game that has Berserker Rage will also benefit from this change. So for example, the Rabid Prowler, that's kind of going to get a buff because of this, since it's no longer going to be taking that self-damage. Now Volko, of course, is a master that's kind of in a weird spot where it got nerfed because it was just overpowered in 2v2, and then it became kind of off the radar in both modes. So we'll see if this brings Volko back. We'll see if this change can help him get a footing in 1v1 and 2v2. Okay, so next buff we have is for the black hole. So the duration of the black hole is going to go up from 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Of course, the black hole, the primary effect of the black hole is to protect yourself from spells. So if someone throws a fireball at your unit, you black hole it, the fireball splats where nothing is, and then your units appear out of the black hole and they're safe. There are a lot of other kind of niche uses for the black hole, but that's the main use. Now the duration of it is in some scenarios going to really help. So if you've got a channeled spell, or a spell that does things over time, like a Magma Storm or a Beam of Doom, this additional duration is going to mean that your units are protected for longer and will therefore take potentially less damage. So let's see if the black hole comes back into fruition with that change. Now, as we saw with Zip's Zappinator, with the piloted keyword, a lot of the Scrat units are getting piloted. So remember, piloted means when the unit dies, it drops a Scrat. Now, the Boom Buggy is going to receive piloted, and as we see we go through, there'll be a number of them that get piloted. Here we see a buff for Combustion. Now, Combustion got changed recently, where the master damage got nerfed. It would no longer do its damage in stages. It would all be one big pop. Therefore, it could be more playable against with shields. Looks like that change was potentially too much of a nerf, so it's getting a damage increase from 200 to 300, but again, that's in one pop, so a single shield can protect against that. Now we see another change here. Defenso Chopper gaining piloted. Empowered Soul Stealer. So this is an interesting one, where over the course of a number of different patches, we see the Empowered Soul Stealer getting buff after buff after buff. And here's another one. So the Empowered Soul Stealer now starts with Rage. That was one of the buffs it got previously. And you're going to get 3 souls per sacrifice instead of 2. So remember, that's sacrificing Slitherbounds. We'll see. I feel like this is at some point going to become powerful. The problem, of course, with this is it's a 7 mana card that's very susceptible to removal. So you might say, well, let's just play a black hole then, but then that's more mana you're paying to try to keep this alive, so that's a lot of value you need to get out of it. But we'll see if we see more Empowered Soul Stealer out there on the ladder. Now we have a buff for the Frostbearer. So the Frostbearer was one of the newer cards, just getting a mana cost down from 5 to 4. So remember, the Frostbearer is like the Cursebearer, but for Frost. Of course, now it's a 4 mana card. You can receive it from perk 3 APEP. Whether you want that or not depends really on the matchup you find yourself in. But that's, you know, that's the whole RNG aspect of those free cards from APEP. Sometimes you get exactly what you need, sometimes you really don't. Now, another card we've seen some changes to recently is Rockin' Roller. So Rockin' Roller, remember, it's the spell, cools down the meteor, does some damage, and then a blue golem appears. So now it's going to get a damage increase from 200 to 300. So it's going to do 300 damage on impact, do another 150 damage as it rolls forward, and then a blue golem rises from the crater. Another piloted change here, Scrat Tank. Now we have a change to, again, another spell we've seen quite a few changes to recently, Sunburn. So remember, Sunburn was changed to no longer damage friendly units. It's now getting a buff where its damage is going up from 80 to 100. And of course, as we always talk about these changes, it might seem like a small change, a small buff, but it can suddenly kill a lot more than it previously couldn't. So if we just quickly go through the list of things that it can now kill at 100 damage that it couldn't kill at 80 damage, Dragon Whelp, Ghost could be quite important in certain scenarios, Razor Squadron, that's a really good removal, Sapphire Pebble, that's kind of a bit of a weird one because the Pebble is going to have not max HP for very long anyway. Spear Throwers, Tantrum Throwers, Bounceberry Flingers, Chisma Boomstick, that's a card that's really annoying at times and removal is really nice on that, and Jade Flingers. So Sunburn can suddenly remove a lot more minions than it previously could. Now we have an attack speed buff to the Werewolf. Now this is going to be for whatever werewolf, however you get it, from Howling Moon, from Twice Bidden, Once Bidden, whatever. So just a small attack speed going from 1 second to 0.9 seconds. Wrecked Walker next. This is again another card that we've seen a lot of changes to. Tech being changed, number of nats being changed in the past. Here we have another tech reduction. So tech cost of 30, and that will get you 2 nats. Previously it was 40, now it's 30. Now, we have another piloted here, but this is kind of a tricky one, because of course Rekinator, you tend to find Rekinator in Mordar decks, and the fact Rekinator may be dropping a Scrat could cause some problems with some reses. If you get the res as you want, the Rekinator pops out of the tombstone, great. If it doesn't quite work, and then you've got another Rekinator or something from a previous res, and then you've got a Scrat that's about to... So yeah, the Scrats could be a problem in the Rekinator deck. May just require people to play a bit more carefully, may just be very problematic. We'll see how that goes. Again, another piloted buff here for the Zeppelin Bomber. And remember, if you have the Scrat Swarm, you get 2 of them, so that's 2 Scrats it can potentially drop. Okay, so those are the buffs that we've got for patch 1.37. The next are the rebalances. Now, as mentioned, the rebalances are things that are being changed dramatically or in various ways. So this is a big change here to APEP. Overall, a nerf to APEP. So remember, APEP's perk 2 previously gave you a shield totem that would make your face, your master tower, invulnerable except for true damage whilst the shield was active. Now, the way that that's being worked is being changed. So the shield totem now, all damage will be redirected to the totem. So that means the damage to your face will damage the totem. Once the totem's fully damaged and dead, then you won't be able to protect yourself. So the offshoot of that is the totem's getting a health buff, so from 250 to 400, and the totem duration is going up from 7 seconds to 15 seconds. Now, there are certain scenarios where you can use your totem previously and it could save you hundreds and hundreds, even thousands in some scenarios, of damage to your face. Whereas now, that's not going to be quite so easy to do, because the damage will go to the totem. Once the totem's soaked the maximum 400 damage, then it will go and your face will be susceptible. So that's, I think that's probably a healthier change. We'll see how that feels in action. Now, of course, if you look at high-level APEP players, you will see sometimes they use their totem as a makeshift wall. And if they're doing that, then of course this is going to give a better wall because it's going to last longer and have more health. So what I mean by that is sometimes you use it to keep your units alive rather than protect from face damage. But of course, if you do that, you've got to be careful you do it at the right time because it's not available to protect your face. So that's, I think, a healthy change for APEP. Now we have a rebalance to Milloween. So there is a bigger Milloween rework going on behind the scenes, but it's not quite ready for public consumption yet. So whilst that's happening, we're getting a bit of a rebalance here, which is going to be overall a nerf. But it's a rebalance because some stats are going up, some are going down. So her Arcane Golem that she gets from perk 1, the original damage that it starts with is going to go up from 30 to 35, but the damage gain per spell is going to go down from 5 to 3. So that means the maximum damage she can get, previously it was 80, now it's going to be reduced to 65. So hopefully that's a healthier change for Milloween in the meantime before we get the full Milloween rework. Now another master rebalance here, Ravager. So this is going to affect perk 1 and perk 3, that's the Brutus and Terror Brutus. So they're both going to have their self-healing removed. But the offshoot of that is they're going to get a health buff. So their health for the Brutus, 800 to 1,000, and from the Terror Brutus, 2,000 to 2,500. So the problem with the healing is, firstly, a lot of people didn't really know that it existed. Even quite experienced players weren't really aware that Brutus did this. And that just gave the Brutus some real staying power just against low DPS. So what they've decided to do is they've removed that self-healing but make up for it a little bit with the health. So for example, if you've got a lot of DPS on the unit, it's still going to die pretty quickly. So the curse is going to be super strong against this, of course doing 3% damage every second. So we'll see how that goes, because there was always awkward situations where you had Brutus on your master's face, and depending on what master you were playing, Brutus could out-heal the master, and he would just stay around, and then you'd have to devote mana to dealing with it. So we'll see if this is a healthier change or not. That's a lot more health, especially for the Terror Brutus. Let's see how that works out in reality. Okay, so Bazooka Scrap. Before you lose your mind, just take a moment. So the health is going to go up from 65 to 100. Tower damage down from 100 to 50%. But, as we'll see very shortly, there's going to be a change to the marked mechanic. And the Bazooka Scrat is something that a lot of people hate when it's used in conjunction with a Vulture Prime or a TAS, where you can force it to attack units. It does a huge amount of damage. It's also very confusing for a lot of new players as well, because they're like, why the hell is this Bazooka Scrat? It says only attacks buildings, it's destroying my units. So we'll see a change to marked that will hopefully make that a better experience for everyone. Now, Cannon Roller here, getting a slight rebalance. It's getting the attack speed increased, so that's a nerf, but it's gaining piloted, so that's a buff. Then we have a rebalance here for Clear Skies. Remember, Clear Skies is the spell that heals effectively everything. So Master Healing being reduced from 100 to 50%. Now it's only going to remove Rage and Haste from enemies, whereas previously it would do it from everyone. So that's going to be better for the team using it. Additionally, it's going to remove Poison and Curse only from friendlies. So this is going to be something that's going to be more about healing and debuffing, buffing minions, as opposed to healing masters. And this is probably, there's definitely scenarios late game, Mana Frenzy, Deep Mana Frenzy, where Clear Skies healing everything can just really keep the game going on for a long time. So that may be the reason for one of those changes. Right, here we have a rebalance to the Dormant Defenders. So the Dormant Defenders, remember, they start as a building, they start dormant and then they awake. The previous version would be they are awake whilst you have Mana Surge, 6 or more mana, and then they would then become dormant again. Whereas now, they start dormant, you wake them by getting into Mana Surge, and once they're awoken, they are fully awoken. They will no longer return to dormant. So the mana cost is going up from 7 to 8, and they're going to stay awake once they're woken. Now, one of the strengths of them was the fact that you could just make them sit on a bridge and be really annoying, which you will no longer be able to do. So we'll see if that's an overall nerf to it. I think it probably is. We'll see how that plays out. Now we have a Dragon's Nest rebalance. Dragon's Nest, again, another card that's received a lot of changes recently, trying to find a best place for it. So Dragon's Nest is going to be a summoner building. So it's going to summon a Dragon Whelp every 5 seconds. If you cast a spell, then the next time it spawns a Dragon Whelp, it's going to be... it's going to give you an extra Dragon Whelp. Now, I think they're flightless Dragon Whelps. Seems a little bit confusing here, but we'll get some confirmation. I'm pretty sure it's flightless Dragon Whelps. Now, as mentioned, the marked mechanic is being changed. So, as mentioned before, the marked mechanic with the Bazooka Scrat can be really obnoxious. So it's no longer going to cause ranged building haters to attack minions. So building haters, we're going to say Bazooka Scrat and Scrat Launcher. They will no longer attack minions, sorry. But ranged minions, proper, true, regular ranged minions will still receive that effective ranged taunt and attack whatever is marked. And the damage is going to go up from 25 to 35%. So hopefully that will remove the obnoxiousness of the Bazooka Scrat, and also the confusion that people will encounter, or previously did encounter. Now we have a rebalance to the Ritual of Servitude. So, Ritual of Servitude was a very specific card that you would only find in very specific decks. So now it's going to receive some changes where it could potentially find itself in other decks. So previously it would give you a random card of the mana value of the cheapest card in your deck, excluding the Ritual of Servitude. What it's going to do now is it's going to give you a random 7 mana minion card. Remember, this is a 6 mana spell. But if there are no cheaper cards, then summon an 8 to 9 mana minion card. So that means you can still kind of get the Ritual of Servitude core historic experience, but you can also use it outside of the sort of Ritual of Servitude regular decks, where it doesn't have to be the cheapest card. And of course, if you play this in Morelia, reduce the cost of it and really prosper. So it'd be nice to see how that changes the way that ritual decks are built. Now we have a small rebalance here for Zealots. Not fully sure really what or why this what this achieves, but basically when you had one Zealot left, it would get Rage and Hasted. Now it's going to get Berserker Raged instead of the Rage and Haste. So no Rage and Haste, but Berserker Rage. And as we saw before, Berserker Rage no longer does self-damage. Okay, rebalances are done. Let's have a look at the nerfs. Healing Fireball. Healing reduced from 400 to 350. Remember that healing is spread between all the units it lands on. Still allowed to be wildcarded. That could potentially be something to be looked at in the future. Jolo, the Hero Scrat. Very strong tank. So this is a copies allowed reduction from 3 to 1. That means you can't wildcard it in any mode. No change to solos, but pre-mades you can't have 3 of them anymore. Mountain Shaper next. Now this is a card we see a lot in duos. Very, very powerful. Now the way it works is it builds up charges up to a maximum of 5 charges. The time that it takes to build up a charge is going up from 4 to 5 seconds. Seems like a small change, but of course if there's 5 charges, there's 5 extra seconds. So if you're in a duos game with lots of stuff going on, you wanted to use it as much as possible, this is going to reduce the number of times you can use it at full charge. You may see people having to either wait longer to get the full charge or using it with less than the full charges. Next up we have a nerf to a card that a lot of people hate, the Sapphire Pebble. This is the building. So the duration is being reduced from 15 seconds to 12 seconds. So that's going to be a nice nerf. One of the things I would like to see is the range being reduced. I think the range of it's far too long. You shouldn't be able to place it on the bridge and still defend your face. That just seems like it's just too much. You should have to make a decision. If you're going to play it defensively, play it defensively. If you're not, then don't. You shouldn't be able to play it wherever you want and get max value out of it. But we'll see. A reduction from 15 to 12 seconds means that you're going to have to be more patient, play it when you need it rather than just have it there. Now a scrap mechanic change here. So scrap is no longer going to be generated on ability cards. So remember, scrap is generated when an Outlander card is drawn, but no longer for ability cards. So things like Hellfire from the TAS, Shadow Dance from Wrecked, or Plasma Blast from Ruby. So that should, in those decks, reduce the amount of scrap being created. So this is kind of a nerf probably directed towards the scrapyard. We'll see if this slows that down. Now we have a nerf to the Swarmers. So Swarmers' health going down from 35 to 30. And of course this is going to be a nerf not only to the Swarmers but also to the Swarmer Spawner. So the Swarmer Totem is going to feel this nerf substantially. Now they will trade a lot worse against units. So for example, a Scrap doing 10 damage now only needs 3 attacks instead of 4 attacks to deal with a Swarmer. So Swarmers against Scrats are going to come off worse. So let's see how that pans out when we see it in action. Okay, so that's the balances, the buffs, the rebalances, and the nerfs. Now we have some bug fixes. So, fixed an issue with Revelry animation missing on several Revelry cards, which they are. Your guess is as good as mine. Fixed an issue with clipping on Slitherbound. No idea what that means. Fixed an issue with missing description on Avea's completed quest buff icon. Okay. Fixed an issue causing absurd amounts of mana freeze in adventures. And fixed an issue where illusory explosion damage would trigger Voidborn Wound for all players in the match. Now that's quite a big fix in certain scenarios. If both players were playing that illusory Voidborn stuff, then triggering the wounds not only for yourself but also for your opponent was quite an issue. Okay, so those are the bug fixes, but before we go, we've got one more little bonus for you. We've got some new artwork for some cards. We've got the Ravenous Swarmers, looking fairly monstrous. We've got an update for Rock Rivals, really loving this bit of artwork. And finally, Tantrum Throwers. There you can see them with their spears. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our patch notes for Kaboom Kingdom 1.37. As you can see, there is a lot of stuff coming. New cards, as we saw, new arena, updated arenas, a new adventure, previous adventures now co-op. We've got a bunch of balance changes. We've got new card art. So much in this patch. Can't wait to get stuck in. If you guys are enjoying the content here on the channel, here in the fish tank, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any other updates. And I will see you soon within the game. We'll see how these changes play. As always, it's one thing to see them on paper. We'll see how they play in the arena, especially the new arenas. Can't wait. Okay, this is Bad as Fish 80 signing out. Take care, everyone, and see you soon.